Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
In this episode, I talked to my financial planner about steps to financial freedom. We discuss how buying a house is overprescribed and often an optional step for the solo person. We also talk about special financial considerations for singles, why credit card consolidators are often a scam, how you need a fee-only financial planner, and at some point you may need to suck it up and wash dishes by hand. One thing to note, toward the end of the episode, we talk about financial considerations for guys, but please know that advice is useful for both women and men. If you stick around to the very end, I have some bonus material where I debunk an article that makes the case for the financial benefits of marriage. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Amy Gibb, or as I refer to her, Money Amy. Amy is a certified financial planner. She has worked advising individuals and businesses, and I have been working with her for more than 15 years. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
So when you hear me say remarkable life, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to you to live a remarkable life?
Well, it actually sounds very exciting to me. I always think of it on a personal level, whether it's travel or adventure or relationships or things you are interested in. Certainly my background is in money, so certainly you have to have money to support those things. But remarkable to me means really enjoying what you're doing on a daily basis.
So I agree with you, the idea that if you want a remarkable life, it helps to have the money to finance it.
To be able to pay for it.
Yes, right. Like I actually don't believe that a remarkable life has to be an expensive life.
I think you're right.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But it might be.
Yes.
If travel is involved, if entrepreneurship is involved, if the arts are involved, if there's going to be some expenses associated with that stuff.
Or rich friends.
Yeah, I think about this, I think like a painter can have a remarkable life.
Yes.
Where he has a very modest space and he paints every day and he creates. That can lead to a remarkable life, and that can actually be very low cost. Travel doesn't have to be expensive, but no matter what, you got to climb on a plane.
Yes.
You have to forego work.
Yeah. Perhaps,
and so financing that is important. So I want to run by you and get your reaction to. So the idea behind this is, I think that most of what we're going to talk about is probably generally good advice for anyone, single or not, male or female. But I think what happens is when you're on your own, the stakes in some ways go up. That is, you don't have a cushion.
Yes.
You might not have a hedge, someone else who has income. However, you also have the advantage of you can run really lean.
Or not have to be responsible for other people.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it has advantages and disadvantages. It has challenges and opportunities. Regardless of that, I want to set forth a path and you tell me what you think about it. And it goes something like this. If you want to achieve, let's use the word financial independence. That is that, you just truly don't have to worry about money in a sense that you have, that you have a reasonable, like you've lowered your risk in your life. You can imagine a world of a good retirement. You're not eating cat food.
Based on what you like to spend.
That's right. And it looks something like this. You pay off your credit card debt, number one.
Yes.
You build an emergency fund of minimum of 6 months.
Correct.
Of living. So you could not work for 6 straight months and you could still pay your bills.
Correct.
You then start to invest in some sort of retirement fund
Yes.
401k, IRA, depending on your work situation,
Real estate,
and so on.
a variety of things.
Yeah. Oh, so that's the next one is, so you've paid off your debt, your credit card debt. You have your 6-month emergency fund. You're now funding your 401k or your IRA at, up to ideally the max limits, which what is probably 18, 19,
24.5, I believe, for 2019.
Is it that high?
And it may be the over 50 amount. I think you're right. 19,000 for under 50 and 24 for over 50.
For over 50.
It happens to everyone.
So, and then you consider buying a house.
Yes and no.
I would say that. So I would say the issue is, so to me, buying a home or a condo or whatever it is not an obvious thing that you do.
Yeah, it's not required to have financial independence.
That's right. So let's set the house thing aside for a moment.
Yes, agreed.
So house or no house, the next thing would be you start to invest post-tax dollars in investments.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about why post-tax dollar investment is important.
Yes.
So which one of those do you want to talk about first, the house or the post-tax dollars?
Let's talk about the house. Because it's sort of a cultural thing in America.
That's right.
And your parents will harass you about it, or your friends or whatever. So let's talk about buying a house or a condo or a townhouse, a co-op or an apartment.
Okay. And so so first of all, my take on this is that buying a house is overprescribed.
I agree. And
that there are a much more limited set of circumstances by which you should do it than most people consider.
I would agree. It's sort of an old-fashioned American ideal.
Yeah. So let's talk through what are the check boxes that would lead you to, yes, I definitely should buy a house. No, I should definitely not, versus I could go either way.
So definitely buy a house. I would think you have to have at least a 5-year horizon.
Okay.
So if you say whatever community you're living in, whether the job you have or the jobs you can get, and you like living in that community, that you're not as mobile as a lot of young people are these days. Mm-hmm. So you say 5 years, oh yeah, I could totally envision living in this community, in this apartment, in this townhouse for 5 years.
Okay.
And I think people are a lot more mobile than they used to be. So I think that is an important piece of the puzzle is, oh, this studio apartment, could I live here for 5 years? No, it would be too crowded for me. Or I don't really like my job. Or I can't stand living in Chicago for 5 more years, or whatever it is. So I think you need to have a 5-year vision. And sometimes that's difficult at all stages of your life because you don't know where you're going to be in 5 years. So time.
And why 5? Is it because of the cost of buying?
Correct. The cost of entrance and exit from the market. So cost of entrance is, the cost of getting a loan. It's going to be all-in fees somewhere between, $5,000 and $10,000 to get in, the cost of moving, the cost of fixing up, having double rent for a couple months, all those kind of things. And then there is a cost of, even though getting in, you don't pay the commission on the real estate, it's embedded in the price.
Yeah, you're still paying for this.
And then getting out. So getting out, 5 to 10% commission and expenses. So right there, we're looking at, 15% cost to get in and out. And if real estate appreciates in a good economy at 2 to 3% a year, well, you do the math. 15 divided by 3 is 5 years. So the concept in the average economy, some up, some down, it would take you 5 years to break even on buying a house. Mm-hmm. So no reason to jump into buying a condo, a house, an apartment if you're going to stay less than 5 years, because the chances of you breaking even are low.
I see. Yeah, and of course this matters depending on the market. Like some places are booming and some places are not. But where are you
relative to the top?
That's right. And most places aren't booming.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, even if they are. So for example, in the Boulder real estate market, we've been doing really well for probably 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. Well, are we at the top? Do you buy today and are we at the top?
Who
we
knows?
Don't know.
Yeah.
And I imagine when you bought your house, maybe you went down a little at first. Mm-hmm. And then over time, over time, 10 years, you've seen an upslide. I've had the same thing. When I bought a piece of real estate, we even went down a little bit. But since I've owned for a long time, you see the long-term up.
Yeah. So let's look at this question from a different perspective. Is what I imagine people listening saying is like, okay, I get it. But, renting, I'm just throwing my money away, right? People always talk about, I'm just wasting that money.
Correct.
And so how do you address that counter argument?
So, that's our parents and our grandparents talking, which at some level is correct because they didn't move as much. So their goal was to move into a house, get a 30-year mortgage, and then after 30 years, pay off the house, right? So when you talk about throwing money away, so the concept would be when I pay rent, let's say you pay $2,000 a month in rent, it just covers that 30 days you live in the property. Theoretically, when you're paying on a mortgage payment, theoretically you're investing something. Not only are you paying down principal, but maybe your house would appreciate in value over time. So you think about those two things. Well, let's start with a mortgage. In the first 10 years of your mortgage payment may be $2,000 a month. Well, you know how much of that is principal? Maybe $75. Okay. So in the early years of your mortgage, because you're paying interest on every dollar outstanding for every day, most of your payment is interest. As you start to pay that down tiny bit at a time, your principal goes up because the difference in your payment and the amount of interest goes to principal.
Okay.
So really the concept of throwing it away, really all of your payment is interest. Let's be clear. First 10 years. Is that throwing your money away or not? Well, good question. Everyone's obsessed with the concept of mortgage interest being deductible. Well, 2018, the change in the tax law. How does that affect people as they deduct their mortgage interest? Predominantly, it's because the deduction you get anyway, whether you own a house or not, has gone up. Therefore, if I own a $200,000 mortgage on my house and my interest is $10,000 a year, but I can deduct $12,000 anyway, your mortgage interest is no longer deductible.
Okay.
Not because they don't allow you, but you're going to choose the higher number.
Got it. Yeah. So so there's this sort of notion. I agree. Like, to me, I think one of the sad things about American perspective on homes, first of all, I think there is I understand it. Like, people want a piece of land and something they call their own. This is a country that is very independent.
Correct. It is part of our culture.
You don't like a landlord. They're called slumlords, et cetera, right? And so you like being the master of your domain.
Correct.
And so I see that the psychological value of owning a piece of property in that sense. And especially if it can be a diversified part of a retirement portfolio.
If you think of it that way.
That's right. And I think that's the key is, to me, there's no, how do I say this? I think it's unfortunate that Americans seek to build wealth by buying and selling homes from each other.
Correct.
That I think there are better ways to create wealth than through the sale of homes.
Correct.
Especially I think it's a great idea if you own 150 of them.
And then it's a real estate portfolio.
That's right.
Yes.
But when it's one home.
Yeah, a lot of risk.
You're taking on a lot of risk.
Talk to the people in Detroit. That's
right. In the same way that you would not want to own one stock in a portfolio, the idea that you're going to try to build wealth through the serial ownership of a single home, correct, I think is a mistake.
Yeah.
And so the primary value of a home is you live in it.
Yeah, it's what I call a use asset.
Okay. So what do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at everything you own and everything you owe, certain things such as cars and houses are use assets. So you have to live someplace. So even if you don't own your home, you still have to pay rent. So are we going to count the equity in our home as part of our net worth? We might, but the reality is you have to live someplace.
Yes.
So it gives you get some credit.
And at some point you have to move out of your parents' basement.
Exactly. So listen to this, young ladies and young men, get out of your parents' basement. And same with cars. Are we going to make a huge profit on a car? Yeah, no.
Never.
It's a use asset. So, houses and cars, use assets. And I have seen with hundreds of clients, most people do not want to sell their house and downsize. Mm-hmm. Even if they say that's what they're going to do. I would say it's 1 in 5 people actually carry out that process where they, of their own volition, downsize from the home they live in down to something smaller.
Now that they're empty nesters or something.
So they are not necessarily using the equity in their houses. And unfortunately, people refinance their houses over and over and over again. So there isn't a lot of equity anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So think of it as a use asset, a place to live if you're lucky. And we've both owned property in Boulder for a while. We are lucky, not necessarily smart.
No.
We have growth and appreciation in the value of our homes, but you got to live someplace.
Yeah. And I think one of the problems too about having equity in a home is it's not liquid.
Correct.
It's just
and
not
there's a cost
accessible
to get in and out of.
Yes, that's right. So we'll talk about cars in a moment, because that's, I think, that's even more important for the early steps in the process.
Yeah.
So, to me, the kind of, you buy a home or not, right? So you say, are you going to be in it for 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other major consideration besides mobility as you
for a
start to make
reason
this?
to buy or not to buy?
Especially if you're a singleton,
Okay. So sometimes we end up buying something bigger than we would rent.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, as a single person, as a single male, maybe you would rent a 1 or 2 bedroom condo or apartment, but you're into this house thing.
Yes.
And you end up buying a 4-bedroom house with a basement. Would you ever rent a house that big?
Yes.
Maybe if you have a lot of friends coming or a big family that visits, or you throw a lot of parties and you can afford it, you might. But we tend to overbuy when we buy houses.
I did.
Yeah. And it worked out.
It worked out, but I still I'm like, why do I have this yard?
Yeah.
Why, I have guests, but not that often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's worked out.
Yeah.
So for you, I think you would consider downsizing sometime in the future if that led to where your life led you.
Yes.
But a lot of people have a hard time doing that. I would say males probably would have an easier time of downsizing and switching out of a house than sometimes females or families would.
I see. So given your experience, you're saying?
What I see as personality types with how women perceive the house and how men perceive their house. I think women tend to nest and settle and want consistency a little more than males do, just biologically.
I see. So to me, like the holy grail is for financial independence, is that your burn rate is low enough that after you put money in your 401k, IRA, et cetera, after you've paid all your bills, you still have money left over in the bank.
Correct.
And you're like, well, what am I going to do with this money? Right. So you have the option to consume more if you want, go on greater adventures or whatnot. Or if you're someone like me who value saving and so on, you could start to invest that money in equities. You could start buying mutual funds.
Correct.
You can even imagine buying exactly the same mutual funds that are in your 401k.
Exactly.
Now, the difference being you've already paid tax on this money.
Yes.
Whereas the money that goes into your 401k comes out pre-tax.
And you now have a choice.
Yes.
So with a lot of plans, they'll allow you to invest in Roths in your retirement account. But traditionally, we invest pre-tax in retirement, and therefore when you take it out, you're going to pay income tax on that money.
Yes. So to me, I remember when you talking about this to me, this is several years ago, and I just had this like aha moment, this huge light bulb went off in my head. Because, so when you think about it, the average guy, average person is not saving enough.
Correct.
Right? So all the focus from a public policy standpoint, all of the focus from a business standpoint is how do you get Americans to save more money?
Yes and no. Everybody's trying to get you to spend your money.
Well, that's true. I mean, but I'm talking about the people who care about you.
Yes.
So the people who care about you are trying to get you to save more money. But what happens is, and because, I don't know, 8 out of 10 Americans are in trouble.
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Okay.
Yeah.
So 9 out of 10 are in trouble. The 1 out of 10 who follow the money Amy / Peter McGraw path and get to the final step.
Yep.
They don't realize the great advantage they have.
Yeah. I think you find yourself smart, lucky, and fortunate.
Okay. So let's see if we can articulate why that holy grail of buying mutual funds with post-tax dollars is so important for retirement? So one thing obviously is you have more money in the bucket.
Yes.
Right. So obviously more money is better than less money. But what you said to me is that all that money is like, so let's just imagine a scenario. You have $3 million all in 401k, a situation where you have $2 million in the 401k and $1 million in a brokerage account.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the same amount of money, but which person, the 3 million in 401k or the 2 million plus 1 million in the brokerage person is better off?
Well, the one with 2 million in their 401k pre-tax.
Okay.
And the one with 1 million in brokerage after tax is that person is more wealthy than the person that has 3 million in their retirement because they've already paid tax on the million and they continue to pay tax on the earnings as that earnings is generated.
Yes.
So you basically your $400,000, 40% on the after-tax money more wealthy because you've already paid the tax on it. So that's huge.
It's huge. So let's just talk. So I think that's hard, especially if you're listening to this, it's hard to understand that.
Correct.
So the idea is this. So let's say you're going to live on $125,000 a year as a retiree.
Yeah.
If you have $3 million in the 401k.
Correct.
Now you pay tax on income tax on $125,000.
So maybe 25 to 30%.
That's right. Now, if you're that other person with 2 million in the 401k and 1 million in the brokerage account, and you're still living on $125,000, what you can do is blend the withdrawals.
Yes.
Where the money, the first, let's say 50 or 70,000 comes out of the 401k.
And then the balance
comes out of the brokerage account.
Correct.
And as a result, you pay less tax that year.
Correct. To get the same net amount of money.
That's right. Because the 401k money is coming out at a lower tax bracket.
That is correct.
And then the brokerage account money comes out as capital gains, which is what usually 10, 15%.
Correct. Is lower. You may not have gain, which is good and bad.
Yes.
You may be able to even get it out at less tax because you'll blend the gains and losses as you manage your portfolio.
Okay.
And another thing to think about too is depending on where you are on the spectrum, and let's say you are choosing to take Social Security. Social Security, it has increments of taxation depending on your income.
Yes.
So I have seen this over and over again that a couple that has all their money in retirement is taking out $80,000 a year from their retirement, is paying tax on that. Then all of their Social Security is taxable because they've breached the lid. It's 85% taxable. Where the couple that has some money in other low tax or no tax income is paying less tax on their Social Security, so they're even better off.
Yeah. This obviously this is not an intuitive thing.
No. That they do that on purpose so they have a job. The people that do taxation and policy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just to sum this up, like, again, 90% of people never get to this place.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
But if you can get to this place, you all of a sudden have this amazing, you basically squeeze more dollars out of your saved money than you would otherwise.
Per hour you work.
And, this does make sense given that the state of the art in terms of investing is lowering costs, right? So this is why Vanguard and T. Rowe Price and all these, companies have these very, inexpensive mutual funds.
Low cost funds.
So the idea is that you save, where you end up making money is on the money you save.
Yes.
This is just a different way to save money.
Yes.
It's just instead of avoiding the cost of a mutual fund, you're avoiding some element of tax.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you're paying tax up front. In a sense, we as humans and Americans especially hate deferred gratification. So we are always wanting to spend our money. Mm-hmm. So if I force you to pay an extra $4,000 of tax today so you can save your money after tax, tomorrow you're going to forget about it. Mm-hmm. And I've gotcha, basically. So it's a great way to kind of pay your bill today and you forget about it. And it's a huge benefit in the future.
Right.
But you're still going to pay that tax today where you could have deferred it in the 401k.
Yeah, it's a neat idea. I mean, again, I'd like for more people to get to that space.
Yeah, so it should be a balance.
Yes.
I mean, the beautiful thing is there's, in the investment world, they talk about specifically when you get in your late 40s and your early 50s that you should, if you haven't already, start to balance your tax deferred and your after tax money. Because when you sit there at 62, 65, 70, and you're taking money out of your retirement, the biggest whine I hear people say is, I had to pay so much tax on the money I took out of my IRA. My mother once said, we already paid tax on that money. And I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yes.
And now you got to pay it now.
And, well, of course, the big risk and the big problem is who knows what's going to happen to the tax rate in 10, 20, 30,
Correct.
40 years. It's, if you look historically in the United States, it's been, it's very low right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's been incredibly high at different times.
And like the Reagan years, it was incredibly high.
Yes.
So we are in a historically low tax
It doesn't
bracket.
feel like that to people, but it is true.
No, it never does. When you're paying out your money, it never feels like that. So
let's step back to the beginning of this chain, which is paying off credit cards.
Yeah.
Right. So when you advise people, that's probably, you probably spend a lot of time on this topic.
Yeah. Americans are a little crazy with their credit cards. Average American has something like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of credit card debt.
Is that right?
It's crazy. And our whole culture supports that. You buy stuff on Amazon with your credit card. Don't worry about paying today. Pay over time. Mm-hmm. We're a little crazy about that, and everyone's comfortable with it now. In the old days, let's say during the Depression and my grandparents' era, you didn't borrow because you didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring. And now we have access to credit.
I would say this, it's not even that far back. Like when I was young, like credit cards weren't used for convenience, right? So now we use credit cards as a convenient thing. It just speeds, it speeds transactions.
Yeah.
I had a credit card in case of an emergency.
I remember that.
Right? In case of emergency, break glass and use this Visa card.
For the tire.
That's right. And it was like life. I mean, look, it was simpler back then because it was just simply like, if there was still money in the account at the end of the month, I could spend it.
Yeah.
If there was no money left in the account,
you don't go to the grocery store.
You do not go out.
Yeah.
And so the nature of just the ease.
It was imposed discipline in a sense. Mm-hmm. We didn't have access.
Yes. But now we don't live in that world.
Yeah.
We live in a world where the people don't carry cash.
No.
They use credit cards for all their transactions.
Correct.
The pain of paying is decoupled.
Correct.
Right? So you don't get the bill to the end of the month.
Yeah. Or you don't look at it to the end of the month. Or you don't look at it
at the end of the month. So can you talk through some of the strategies and some of the kind of conversations you have with your clients about, because if step one, before you can do any of these other things, is get out of credit card debt.
Yeah.
Of course, the reason being you should get out of credit card debt before any of these other things is it's just so damn costly.
And you're overspending.
Yeah.
So I think the basis of it is
your burn rate's too high.
You're spending more than you make. So bottom line is when you have credit card debt, I don't care if you said, well, it was that one vacation I did a year, or it was to buy a new dishwasher, or, it was my 25th birthday party. You're still spending more than you make.
Yeah. Look, if you're going to spend, to me, the issue is this is if you're going over your income, if you're spending more than your income because you have to buy a dishwasher, what it means is you need to wash some dishes by hand. I'm being honest.
No, I think it's true. And we as I'm not young anymore, but young Americans and Americans, we would never even think about that. That would not be an option. I dropped my telephone on its little face yesterday and it cracked the screen.
Yes.
So I called my son, who's a techie guy, and I said, what should I do? So he's going to jury rig me a screen and basically save me about $125.
Okay.
Now, at some level.
This is why you're called Money Amy.
I know. So I really should go and just go to the Apple store and get a new screen for $100. It would make logical sense.
Yes.
But at some level, I can't bring myself to do that. So I'm going without a phone for 2 days.
Yes.
And it's actually good practice.
I guess so, yeah, sure.
But anyway, so it's that concept. You should wash dishes before you buy the dishwasher if you don't have the money.
And, if you need to go on a different type of vacation.
Yeah, I agree. And so what you say is, and a vacation is very important. That's a huge motivator for those of us that like those kind of things. Save in advance.
Yeah.
So use that, gee, I don't want to go camping in the desert in the summer.
Right.
Motivation. I do want to go to the Bahamas for a week and it's going to cost me $2,000. Save in advance. Use that as a motivator.
Yeah. And also use it as a motivator to get a better job.
Yeah. Or work more, work overtime, work another job, get cheaper rent, don't buy clothes, whatever.
Yeah. And it's true, this is in the behavioral sciences, there's this thing called temporal discounting. We have a tendency to discount the future more than we ought to.
Yeah.
And some of that is because of an inability to delay gratification. And some of that has to do with that the future seems rather distant.
Yeah.
But most of us have to live in the future we build for ourselves.
Yeah.
And obviously, financing a remarkable life in the moment has implications for living a remarkable life in the future.
Yes.
And so, so credit card debt is a symptom that you are spending too much.
Correct.
And so then if you're going to fix that problem, you
have to spend less.
You have to spend less.
And you have to buy less than you would buy otherwise if you hadn't spent in advance.
You have to spend even less.
Even less.
Yes.
And so I always say, have a conversation with your future self.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are, you've got, $5,000-10,000 of credit card debt because you overspent. Now go talk to yourself who's 2 years older that had to live on a lot less money because your younger self overspent.
Yes.
Have some respect for your older self or what you're going to have to pay to get out of it. But yeah, get rid of credit card debt. Pay it down, get rid of it, set a plan, suffer a little to get it done. As soon as you get that done, it's really like a window opening. You're now ready for the next step and life gets easier.
Yes.
It's amazing how fast life gets easier once you get one of those steps done.
So I talk to young guys a lot who they know there's a problem. They know that they can't be carrying $20,000. By the way, hold on. It's not even young guys. I talk to guys in their 40s.
Oh, yeah. It's a systemic problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel like they're attacking it in the wrong way, which is, I agree with you. You just have to be tougher. You just have to tighten your belt and you'd be surprised how you can eke out an extra few $1,000s through making good decisions,
Correct.
Eating out less, etc.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, again, people look for easy fixes. And so one easy fix is I'm going to go to a consolidator and I'm going to get my credit card debt consolidated. So you're like rolling your eyes right and sighing right now.
Yeah. Well, and there's a number of those plans. I had a client like 15 years ago and met with he and his wife was like, oh, I saw on TV, these people can get rid of my credit card debt. It's going to be great. And another client called me, or not a client, someone called me to work with me. Oh, I understand if I declare bankruptcy, that's the way to go.
I see.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I can't help you. Goodbye. So, I would say 3/4 of those things are schemes.
Total scams.
And you don't even start.
Yes.
There are some of those credit counseling and that they work with you on that are potentials. It's harder to declare bankruptcy now just because you're stupid. There's the whole bankruptcy because you have a huge medical issue or, you live in Detroit and your house is worth nothing or whatever. But for most people, you can't declare bankruptcy and those consolidation things are pieces of crap. So yeah, you got to deal with it yourself. I always say write down on a piece of paper the total amount owed, your payment every month, and your interest rate and what you spent the money on. So a little bit of self-knowledge of, what was that $5,000? And then you attack it by paying minimum payments on the lowest interest rate credit cards.
Yes.
And the then all the extra, more than a minimum payment on the highest interest rate credit card till you get rid of that, and then you work your way down the food chain. The only exception to that is, let's say you have a credit card debt of $1,000 and the interest rate's 12%. If you have 1,000 and you can get rid of that outside that debt with one swing, get rid of as many hunks as you can as fast as you can.
But in general, you always are paying off the thing with the highest interest rate.
So minimums on the lower interest rate, and then all your extra money that you're going to be paying down debt with on the highest interest rate credit card.
So, suppose someone wants to get some help with this. Like they want to find a money Amy.
Good luck.
They want to find their money Amy.
Yeah.
So I feel very fortunate. I don't even remember exactly how I met you.
Yeah. A referral someplace.
It must have been a referral. So, to me, you're the ideal financial advisor. I mean, beyond your expertise, one is you have very sound, reasonable, easy to follow. One thing that I really like about Amy is, and I remember this from the very first time we met. So we talked about my problems. We talked about what I owed, what I didn't owe, what my income was, what my goals were, where I was along this path, etc. And you took copious notes. And then at the end of the session, you basically wrote out a to-do list for me. And that first session, it was a long to-do list. It was like 10 items kind of thing. And you handed it to me. And you basically were like, call me when this is done. Right? And so I had very clear, actionable items based upon our conversation. The other beautiful thing about that meeting, and by the way, Amy and I actually had a meeting before this, is you'll send me an invoice, your hourly rate times the amount of time that the number of hours that we spoke, which is different than a lot of financial advisors who will take 1% of your assets.
Correct.
To do this.
Which isn't bad.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
I think it's terrible.
Okay.
Like, why is it that if someone has $500,000 of assets, they pay less money for the advice than someone who has $5 million in assets?
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So, also, it creates a conflict of interest.
Yes.
Right? So, if your financial advisor is taking 1% of your portfolio to advise you, they might not want you to sell part of your portfolio
to pay off your mortgage,
because you're taking money out of their pocket, even if that's actually a good decision for you.
Correct.
So a fee-based financial advisor / planner is typically, in my opinion, almost always a better value.
I would agree.
And also a source of more objective advice.
Yeah.
And so where does one find someone like you? One is you're looking for someone who's fee-based.
Fee only.
Fee only.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fee only advising is, I think, the best place to go. There aren't a lot of people that do fee only just because
because people are dumbasses and spend the 1%.
Well, and managing people's money, yes, you can make more money doing that.
Yes.
And usually the people that need the help the most tend to have an inability to pay a fee for fee only, or won't. I see people that spend $200 a month on cable and $200 on their cell phone. But if you want to charge them $100 for an hour, they think that's too expensive.
That's so crazy.
But it is what it is.
But I always say this is like, for every dollar I spend on you, you save me or make me 5 times that.
Yeah. But that's because you take action.
Yeah. I love a good to-do list.
I know. And not everybody's like that. So I would say, call the Financial Planning Association, see if they have a list of fee-only planners. True credit counseling, either through your county or your state as a nonprofit entity, true credit counseling.
Yes, right.
You can talk to those people. Reading, there's a lot of great books. I had, and I don't have any titles for you, but I had a friend of mine who's a banker that said she had 3 or 4 financial planning books on her bedside table. And I'm like, give me the names, because I can always learn something, and there's always strategies in there for clients that haven't occurred to me. So there's a lot of great books out there, push aside books that say, if you meditate every day, you're going to become wealthy, because, meditate every day for other reasons, but it's not going to make you wealthy. But any kind of strategies, and it has to ring true with you.
Okay.
Because I can tell you to go on a vegan diet, but if all you want to do is have a hamburger, that's not going to help you. Find a strategy that works for you. But do make a commitment to make some changes. I always tell my business clients who are very independent entrepreneurs that want to do everything their own way, I'm going to give you a list of 10 things to do. And if you don't do any of them, then fire me immediately, because you just wasted your money. All I expect you is to do 3 of the 10. Choose 3. And that's all you really need to do. If you go through those books, or about strategies, pay off the highest interest rate credit card. Well, if you pay off a different credit card, that's something. So make progress.
Yeah.
But then once you get out of the credit card debt, then commit never to do it again, and always pay off your balances in full. One strategy, and actually works for me, is I look at my credit card statement online. People get all their stuff online now, and I make payments in the middle of the month or in advance. I look at my credit card statement sometimes and go, who's been running around with my credit card? How the heck can it be $1,800 and I didn't do anything this month?
I see.
So I will pay $900 off in the middle of the month. I got a little money in my account. Let's quick get it out of there before I spend it on something else.
Okay.
And that's a really good strategy to make even, let's say you have $20,000 of credit card debt, paying $200 off a week rather than $600 a month. You make progress.
Yeah, I see.
And it keeps it top of mind. You're kind of like, I wish I didn't have to pay this extra $200. I'm not going to go out to eat tonight.
Yes.
I think it helps you. It's a motivator.
I agree. The obviously, like, we've been talking about, knowledge, right? Information, right? So, the challenge, of course, is as you said, the information is readily available.
Yeah.
And so people don't seek it out, but even when they do seek it out, when even deep down they know that having credit card debt is bad.
Yeah.
It's the pain of making the changes and creating the new habits. It's hard. It's incredibly difficult, especially, because you have to make compromises, you know what I mean? And now, as someone who lived incredibly frugally for the majority of his life and now is getting to enjoy the benefits of that, I can certainly say that it's worth it. And I will say this, boy, it's so much sweeter.
Yeah.
It's so much more sweet to be able to enjoy it now, having had to tighten my belt.
So, I get to buy what I want at a restaurant rather than have to ask what's special and share it with my neighbor.
That's right. It's no longer devastating that I've showed up 5 minutes after happy hour has ended.
Correct. You saw me last night, didn't you? Okay. Yeah.
And so, I think that one of the things, and I don't know, so one of the reasons why I like a fee-based financial planner is also the accountability.
Yes.
That is, you meet with someone, you make a plan, and then you're going to talk to them at some later point.
Follow up.
And see how you do it. Now, I think there are alternative ways to do that, right? So having someone else who is in your situation where it's like having a workout buddy.
Correct.
I think having a credit card buddy or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Can be good if that person has the wherewithal to be able to follow through on this.
Make sure you have a similar personality and similar goals, but it would be huge to have somebody. And what's interesting is people will talk about sex and drugs and all these things, and they won't talk about money. It's very private, personal, intimate. Yes. People are embarrassed or excited or scared. And so you have to figure out, how you are and find someone that is supportive, that you feel safe with, to do that. But it is common about, how you feel about your money.
Yeah. I think, I have a friend who, I keep saying, like, you got to talk to Money Amy. You got to talk to Money Amy.
Sometimes I don't even know my last name when they call me. Yeah. So I know where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's right. Your referrals are coming from. And what's interesting is he does a lot of self-improvement.
Yeah.
he spends a lot of money on self-improvement and a lot of time and energy on self-improvement. And I'm just like, but dude, you're not going to spend $300 to get this sorted? Like, this is so important to your life. You know, you're in your 40s. You're going to be in your 60s like that.
Yeah.
And so I think like it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yes.
You have to admit that you have failed, that you're struggling.
And I think you look back to your family of origin. All your money, emotions, and personality really come from your family of origin. So, you know, without judging your siblings, your parents or your grandparents, kind of see how your family dealt with money.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. In my family, we have 3 kids. And each of us is totally different with money.
Oh, it's interesting.
It is very,
My
but it's
sister
very
and I
common.
are very similar.
It's very common. So just look how you lived in your family of origin, how you related to money. And most of the things we do today are related to that.
So I want to finish up by talking about someone who's single.
Yes.
And who may remain single for a long period of time, maybe forever.
Yep.
You know, so the world, in general is set up for married people. There's an expectation that at some point you're going to get married, and even probably have children. And that, of course, affects things like mobility, like we were talking about, you know, a need for a home and buying a home and so on. In your experience or in your opinion, do you think that there are any special considerations? As we open this up, we talked about the opportunities and threats of financially of being single. Yeah. What comes to mind? What advice do you have? What issues do you think might be unique to someone who's solo?
I think there's as many advantages as disadvantages. So, I would say traditionally the concept of being in, whether it's a partnership, or a marriage or some kind of long-term relationship with another person or people, we think of the advantages truly of being that sort of, it's an insurance policy.
A hedge.
We pay in, we take care of other people, we pay for them, they pay for us if we have a problem. So think about it theoretically lowering your risk.
Yes.
So traditionally, yes, being in partnership, family, children, aunts and uncles, whatever, theoretically lowers your risk that something's going to happen, you can't work, you need help, someone to take care of you. So that's, I think, is true to a point and is a traditional way of looking at it.
Yeah, of course, that's if all goes well.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, I see families all the time where there's an aging parent and I'm in this situation myself and the kids are like, yeah, good luck, mom. Call me, if you want to give me a birthday present. So even when you have a theoretic safety net, whether it's a spouse or children, you still have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So let's be clear for anybody that's listening that's in a relationship, 50% of marriages end in divorce, 70% of second marriages end in divorce. Your kids don't want to take care of you anyway. You have to take care of yourself as whether you're in a relationship or not.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is, there's the whole male-female thing, what is it, 81 cents to $1 that theoretically women make to men. So for single men, theoretically, you have a financial advantage because, you get to keep your dollar and you get to control how it's spent and you're not spending your money on other people that may or may not be working, that may be paid less and or dependent children and that sort of thing. So at some level, traditionally.
Yes.
I think men have some financial advantages. They tend to make more. They don't have people they have to pay for, that sort of thing. So why not take that advantage?
Okay. So yeah. So what you just described is like you're a guy, you actually have a good income.
Yeah.
You don't have as many expenditures because you're not having to be a breadwinner.
Correct.
Supporting a family. And, but what I think what happens with guys a lot of times is they don't properly appreciate that.
Yeah.
And what they do, they make 2 errors. One is they spend the extra money frivolously. You've got extra money. You buy a bigger and bigger TV.
Buy a boat.
You buy a boat, whatever kind of thing, versus having a plan.
Correct.
For that money and what that might allow you to do in terms of going on adventures or whatever, in terms
retiring
of
early,
retiring early, in terms
being
of
financially stable,
working part-time,
correct.
Quitting a job you hate,
Yeah.
right? Like that. So I think that's the,
and whether it's good or bad, sometimes relationships, partners, spouses sometimes impose some of that on people that would otherwise want to buy the boat.
Yes.
My old ball and chain wouldn't let me buy a boat. Can you believe it?
They did you a huge favor.
Yeah, but so they tend to become sort of a parent influence or an adult influence or discipline. So I actually take your point well. So I think for a single man, you got to parent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to then look at yourself and say, what levels of discipline make sense for me?
Mm-hmm.
As I get older and I'm an adult person, I can't be a teenage boy forever. How can I impose some of those things on myself that are good for me?
Yeah, that's going to, I think the issue is like, look, you've earned the money. You've earned the right to spend it. But to me, the issue is like, okay, what are you spending it on? Are you just spending it on things that are going to be, you're just going to be consuming more stuff? Mm-hmm. Or is it that you're going to do things that are going to help you be a better creator, that are going to enrich your life?
Correct.
And so on. So
I think there's a certain amount of maturity.
Yeah.
And money maturity, some people never get it. And some people get it late in life. Mm-hmm. So I would say what you're speaking to actually, I think, is a level of money maturity.
Yeah.
And how do you, as a single man, you still have fun and do things you want and spend money on things you value.
Yes.
But have a certain level of deferred gratification and money maturity without having to have a partner or a spouse tell you what to do.
Yeah. I'll give like an example of a pretty trivial amount of money that I spend that really enriches my life. I am a member of 2 museums. Right? This sounds like a peculiar thing to do. What you usually think is like, I'm going to go to the museum and I'm going to pay the admission fee and do that. Versus you spend some sum of money every year to be a member of the museum. Now what you get as a result of that is you get free admission. So you can come and go at whenever you want. You get a discount perhaps on special exhibits. You get access to special exhibits. You get an email or a direct mail letting you know what's going on. You get free guest passes, right? And so what ends up happening is you end up going to the museum more often.
Yeah.
You end up going on the museum on a date. It's on your radar, and so on. And so like when I'm down in Denver and And I've got a meeting at 10 and a meeting at 3. I'll go have lunch and then I'll just go to the museum for an hour and walk around and get a bit of inspiration.
Yeah.
You know, and so I end up spending more money than I would normally to go to the museum, but I also go to the museum way more than I would otherwise.
Got a season pass.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. And so, you know, I think like look, and is that a luxury purchase? I think it's sort of it's a luxury purchase.
$40 to go to the museum versus what, $250 to be a member.
Perhaps. Yeah. And in Denver, it's pretty cheap anyways. Yeah. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. And so I think what ends up happening is if you take care of business, right? You do the steps we talked about.
Pay off credit cards.
Have an emergency fund.
Retirement.
House may or may not. Post-tax dollars may or may not. At least when you get to I'm fully funding my retirement account and you still have money left over at the end of the month. Or if you don't, it's worth thinking like, am I getting a remarkable life return on my investment?
On your money. Don't just spend your money where other people tell you to spend it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that, like at this age, and the listeners will already have figured this out, I'm getting out of a very serious illness, which is thankfully a rare thing for me. I am at the point where I'm just like, I will throw down when it comes to good health.
Yep.
Like, I remember I calculated one summer in college, I ate 300 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yep.
And I ate 300 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because I didn't have much money for much more than that. And a peanut butter and jelly sandwich had enough calories for me and was tasty. Protein. And I could make it in a dorm room.
Yep.
Right? For me to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at this stage in my life right now would be the most absurd thing that I can do.
You're over it.
I'm over it. Like, I'm going to have salad and chicken for lunch, and it costs probably 10 times the amount of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But the return on that is worth it. Like, I will spend money for my health and fitness and
well-being. I think it's funny where Pete's idea of luxury is a salad with chicken on it. That tells you where he came from.
That's true. That's fair. But, it was hard to buy a salad for a lot of years.
Because it's a lot of money for a little bit of green.
Exactly. Yeah. And so on. So, any other sort of reflecting on this conversation, any other advice you might have?
Well, just like what you've talked about. How do you choose to spend your money? So, we're working on getting our credit cards paid off. We're working on our emergency fund. We're working on saving in retirement. And you are going to spend some money on discretionary items and luxuries. And
that's the issue is, if you take care of business,
you can.
As you should.
Yeah.
You should enjoy your life. You work hard for this.
And I always tell people to make a list of everything they like to spend money on and put it in order. And I said, nobody else gets to tell you what order you put things in. So maybe you really like nice shoes. Yeah. Or you really have to go and sit in the front row at some sporting event or whatever it is. Fresh flowers. You put them in order. And maybe there's 80 things on the list. Let's say you're trying to do all these other goals. Well, we can only spend money on the first 5.
Yes.
Make sure it's the most important things, and you get to choose. And nobody gets all 80. I've had clients that spend like $400,000 a year, and they don't have a private jet. They're spending $400,000 a year, and they still didn't get everything on their list.
Right.
So really know that it's not you're just being put upon that you don't get everything on your list, but make sure you don't spend money on number 70 and you don't have any money left to spend money on number 6.
Yeah, I see.
So pick and choose. And it actually makes the things you do get to have that you allow yourself to have more valuable to you.
Yeah, so it's that much sweeter. Well, Amy, I knew this was going to be fun.
Yeah.
And
I can't believe it's been 15 years. So.
Yeah, we look exactly the same. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back with some bonus material. Unfortunately, Money Amy is not here. I'm recording this much later after our podcast episode. So I came across this article on thestreet.com. I'll put it in the exhibits. And the title of it is 7 Financial Advantages of Getting Married. And so here are some of those financial advantages as listed in this article. So 1, Social Security benefits. Obviously, you can share those with your spouse. Various tax benefits. So you get a tax break. Estate planning. Retirement assets gathering advantages. Joint financial accounts. Better chance of landing a good mortgage. An advantage in credit scores. And that's 7. Okay, so there's a couple annoying things about this article. So the first one is, as Bella DiPaolo and I discussed in episode 2, titled The Science of Single Living. This is one of those instances where married people have an advantage just simply for being married. So the benefits bestowed by the government create some differential benefit. But the other thing that's really annoying about this is the way this article is positioned as the advantages of getting married. So again, one of those things pushing people towards marriage and yet not really telling the whole story. So the first thing is really this is the advantage of getting married and staying married. The article ignores the role that divorce has in destroying wealth. And so with 40% of marriages ending in divorce, the expected value of these financial advantages, I think in many ways goes away. It is incredibly, incredibly costly to get divorced. The other thing that it ignores is the cost of children. So this is tough to estimate, but it seems about 90% of married couples have at least one child. And the estimates of the cost of raising a child vary, but let's say that number's about, from what I can tell, for a middle-class couple, $250,000 per child just to raise them to age 18. So this doesn't even ignore college costs. And so when you start looking at financial advantages of getting married, they start to go away when you look at the complete picture. Are you able to actually stay married? Or do you destroy all that advantage with your divorce? And if you're getting married and having children, that advantage completely evaporates just because kids are so damn costly. So, being solo and pursuing financial freedom has its own set of advantages. I'll put the stuff in the exhibits, and thanks so much for listening. Looking forward to next episode. I'll give you a teaser here, titled Dating Friends and Sleeping with Strangers, a Valentine's Day edition. I think you'll like it. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and